Ladies and gentlemen, I sold my GR86. I got sad, so I bought a new one, a black base manual. I'm just kidding. This is a 2023 base GR86 owned by my buddy Lemuel from the Leem Wheezy YouTube channel. Go show him some love. And today, now that I have my new Emira, I've been dying to get back in the seat of a Toyota GR86 to compare the experience and tell you that I think these cars actually have more in common than you might think from a philosophical perspective. So, in terms of mods, he's done MXP Comp RS exhaust. It's a catback system, extended wheel studs with spacers. We even got the beautiful HP primacies to get that tail out. Ooh, the Boxer 4 comes to life. A lot more aggressive with that exhaust. All right, so in the driver's seat, familiar place, we're gonna turn off traction control. And now we zoom in on the 4 to red line. Not paying as much attention to the lower revs, of course, which makes a lot of sense. And we're off. Now, you may think it's ridiculous for me to compare this to the Emira, but hear me out. Philosophically, both this and the Emira are about driver enjoyment, engagement, chassis dynamics, and much less about engine, acceleration. And the cool thing about being a car enthusiast today in 2024, is that based on your preferences, based on what you enjoy most about cars, you can find something that appeals to you and your taste. So if you're all about having a V8 naturally aspirated engine, no replacement for displacement, as they say, then you can get that American muscle car. But you're probably going to have a bit of a compromise in terms of the playfulness, the lightweight character, etc. that you're getting from something like a GR86 or a Mazda Miata. And I feel like the Emira is kind of similar, obviously totally different price point, and compared to this car, apples to oranges, but the philosophy of the car is very much the same. Woohoo, I love how playful that rear end is with the HP privacy tires. So the philosophy of this car and the Emira is that the driver engagement, the inputs like the manual transmission as an example, the steering, the pedal box, throttle response, those things are more important than just raw straight line performance. And in the Emira, it's no slouch, right? You're making 400 horsepower, 315-ish pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60, a little over 4 seconds. But the engine isn't the centerpiece of the vehicle by any means. You have a red line that's less than 7,000. It's a supercharged V6 engine. It's the 3.5-liter Toyota 2GR FE engine that's also used in the Camry, among other Toyota vehicles. And in stock configuration, it's not that inspiring compared to the other aspects of the car. And I am considering doing a third cat delete and exhaust to help with the sound. But I feel like that's a commonality between these two cars, which is that they both are very much chassis first, handling first, driver enjoyment first, with one large asterisk, I would say, which is that this second gen GR86, right, I had the first gen FRS before this, the steering on that was just so much better. It was like, it almost, not quite, but it almost felt like it was hydraulic. It was so good for EPS at that price point. It's just absolutely insane. Nothing even close to the price point touched that steering. And in this gen, you still have that weird, just like my car did, this weird numbness and stickiness right around center. And then even once you start turning the wheel a little bit more, it's not quite as communicative as that first gen. It feels like they dialed up the refinement of this vehicle. It feels like they made this a little bit more mainstream in a way to be more appealing. Like the throttle tip-in is much more aggressive than first gen to make it feel more peppy. When I first got into this car, I'm used to driving my Emira right now, and it took a bit more throttle than I recall to actually get this to rev match appropriately. So the throttle response is like, it's kind of an on-off switch, but it's also a little bit, it requires a bit of a jab at the same time. Lemuel was telling me it feels like there's almost a bit of a delay from when you give it the throttle input to when you actually get the blip.
And I'd like to add on that, sometimes I will even have to put my pedal to the, or my foot to the floor to even rev match properly, and it'll only go up to maybe 4,000 or 5,000 RPM at that point, and that just, you know, it kind of takes away from the enjoyment of the car, but your brain gets used to it.
Yeah, it's not quite one-to-one. Like, you have to think about it a little bit. There is a bit of a learning curve when you first get the car. Ooh, bumpy. It's actually pretty comfortable, though. I forgot. This is a great... It's a super compliant sports car, you know, because they have such a low center of gravity with the overall engineering and also that boxer engine. They can keep the suspension more compliant and still have great body control. But like I was saying about the Emira engine, over here too, they increased the displacement in the FA22. But I mean, this engine is also not inspiring. It's not the centerpiece of the vehicle. I mean, let's not even discuss the reliability issues. Just the sound, the performance. It's not what a lot of people think of when they think of a dedicated sports car. But I think what a lot of people get wrong is thinking that you need that for an excellent driving experience. So it depends on your preferences, it depends on your biases, it depends on what you value as a driver. And if you're anything like me, you find much more enjoyment and reward from pushing a car in the canyons or on track and dancing with it at the limits. Less about, you know, the way that the engine sounds or how hard it pulls. And those are still important things, but things that I can compromise on if I'm going to get a better chassis and better steering and better inputs and handling at the limit. One thing I don't like about the GR86 is that it's one of those cars that I generally only enjoy when I'm pushing it hard, because the limits are so low, because you can actually rotate through the gears, pretty short gearing, and still be below the speed limit, or not too far above it. And just the way that it drives and the engine and the inputs, etc., it really eggs you on, and it's harder for me to enjoy it just, you know, puttering around town. Whereas the Emira, you can enjoy that. Sorry?
Left.
Oh, left.
Yeah.
Bad. Whereas the Emira, it feels fun even at low speed because it feels so special. Again, those little touches, how communicative the steering is, all these details. Whereas with this car, if I wasn't hitting red line or braking rear wheel traction, which admittedly is very easy to do, I wasn't enjoying it day to day in the same way that you can enjoy the Emira or another car that feels special at low speed. Oh, the heel toe on this is so money though. So money. So things I miss about the GR86 now that I'm driving the Emira. Number one, there's two things that come to mind. Number one is that when you're driving a cheap sports car, this is less than 30 grand. You just don't have to give a fuck. Like, you're not worried about the car when you park it. You're not worried about the car, you know, just driving day to day. It feels like a normal car. And I like that. You can be carefree with it. When I first got my FRS when I was younger, in my early 20s, I was very precious with it. And now that I have the Emira, I'm getting some of those vibes again. I'm like, ooh, I want to PPF it, and I'm trying to keep things in check because I don't want to be too precious with my vehicles. I want to get a lot of enjoyment and experiences from them. So I do plan on tracking the Emira, but it's very much going to be after I first get at least the front PPF, so it's not completely scattered with the rock chips. Is she not going?
Yeah, she gave us the way.
The other thing is how playful the rear end is on this car at low speeds, because it has these skinny, I think it's like 215 section width tires, HP primacy, and they're just like, it makes the car so eager to rotate and play. The Emira, of course, has much higher limits. It's a mid-engine vehicle, much wider section width, and it also comes with Cup 2s. You can get Goodyear Eagle F1s, but again, I'm going to be tracking it, so I got the Cup 2s. And someone was asking me in the comments, what do I enjoy more? And there's different types of enjoyment you get from different vehicles. The Emira feels like an occasion when you're driving it. Seeing the actual throttle actuator in your rear view mirror, amazing. The shift action of the shifter is so crisp, so nice. You have the exposed linkages in the center there. And, you know, the supercharger whine is still unique and fun, even if the engine isn't as inspiring as something like the Cayman GTS 4.0. So it's a different kind of fun, and I'm very fresh in the experience. I've literally owned the car for a little over a week. Whereas with this car, it's also a different kind of enjoyment. It doesn't feel as special when you're driving it, but it feels like a toy that you can just throw around, play around with kicking the tail out, even going to get groceries. I remember, you know, turning off traction control and just turning around these city streets on right-handers, kicking the tail out, getting a bit of counter steer, and that's fun. That's not something that you can do with most sports cars, especially the higher-end sports cars, Porsches, and even the Lotus, right? Because the limits are much higher. It's not as easy to get the tail out at road legal speeds. The other thing I'm going to miss about the GR86, and I am going to be replacing it with probably an S2000, possibly an E46 as a track toy, is consumables. So when you go on track, a lightweight car like this, or a Miata, or an S2000, consumables are so cheap in comparison to something like a Porsche Cayman, or a Lotus Emira, or even muscle cars that are a lot heavier, right? You're talking about tires, smaller tires, you know, narrower tires, going through brakes, going through your rotors. All of these things add up, and if you're frequently going to the track, that's not something that enough people take into consideration when they're talking about what's a great track toy. Yes, the Camaro SS 1LE, amazing performance, right? But the consumables on that versus something like this, I mean, it's a massive difference. You know, it's funny, I used to think that the throttle in this was too on-off switch, too touchy, and now after driving the Emira, I feel like I need to really be intentional to blip this hard. I wonder if they made a difference between the 2022 and the 2023 in throttle response. Would have to drive those back to back, because this just feels a little bit different than I recall my 22 feeling. Anyway, my friends, that's a quick take on GR86 versus Emira. We're going to have a direct comparison in the near future. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out Liam Weezy, linked below. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in the next one.